We are currently on the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. And this 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, the essence of the chapter is how do we direct our transmigration? To be more accurate, how do we direct our transmigration so that we may go back to God? It's already pointed out elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita that this world or this Prakriti binds us because we identify with the Prakriti of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. And this drives us into repeated cycles of birth and death. In the Mandukya Upanishad, it has been explained, and also in the Bhagavad Puran, it has been explained that Pavakad Vispulingaha, that God is the fire, we are the sparks from that fire. Prakriti is the smoke that arises from the fire. And the flames that arise from the fire are also parts of divinity or God's energy, superior energy. Those sparks, that is, those individuals who get entangled in the smoke, they are caught in this repeated cycle of birth and death because they identify with the smoke, with the Prakriti. Whereas those who are ready to leave the smoke and re-enter the flames and the fire, these are destined to become free from the cycle of birth and death. It's important to understand that if you are attached to Prakriti, everybody has different directions to go. Urdhva gachanti sattvasto madhye tishtantya bharatah jaganya. So Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that those who are in Sattva Gun predominantly, they go to heaven, upwards. They go to the planets where pious people dwell. Those who are attached to Rajagun at the time of death, they remain in the middle planets, including this earth. And Adho Gachanti Tamasaha Jaganya Guna Vrittisto Adho Gachanti Tamasaha. So those who leave this, who pass away from their lives in Tamagun, they move to lower planets. This is also explained elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita as Asurim Yonim Apanam Mudo Janmani Janmani. So they go to Asuric wombs, birth after birth in a downward spiral. So what happens at the time of death? At the time of death, the individual soul carries with it the impressions of the previous life, just like the breeze carries the fragrance of a flower. So it carries the subtle body, and this subtle body, which is the impressions of the previous life, also contains what they call as the causal body, which is consisting of all the karmas you have performed, all the habit patterns of speech and behavior and thought which you have cultivated, all your unfulfilled, unexpressed desires, these are carried from your body to the next. Shariram yadavapnoti yachapya utkramati ishvara grihitvaitani samyati vayur gandhani vaashayat. So this is how, when you leave the body, this gross body, which is no longer useful for fulfilling your desires, you move on to the next body, carrying with it the impressions of your previous life, just like the breeze carries the fragrance of a flower. And our route during the journey, you experience all the good that you have done as Swarg, and you experience all the evil you have done as Narak. And thus, experiencing Swarg and Narak, you move on to the next birth. That next birth, which gives you your senses, your body, and that womb, which gives all these to you, is determined by your behavior. Krishna, of course, in this chapter, is explaining how you can become free from the cycle of birth and death. I remember many years ago, I was in the Middle East, and one of the people who did not attend my lecture on transmigration met me outside the hall. And he told me that, I heard you said, doctor, that at the time of death we attain what we are constantly thinking of. I said, that's what Krishna says in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajante ante kalevaram tam tam yavaiti kaunteya sada tad bhav bhavita. Whatever you think of at the time of death, that you will attain. So he said, I'm going to keep with me at my time of death a picture of the Sultan of Brunei, so that when I leave this body, I will come back as the Sultan of Brunei. I said, why? Because he is the richest man in the world at that time. So hearing this, I realized that this is why this gentleman did not come for the lectures. Because spiritual life, by which I mean returning to God at the time of leaving this body, begins only when you have realized that you no longer want to come back here, which means you have experienced suffering. Even the Buddha said that the essence of life is suffering, and no one can begin the process of spiritual life until one has understood that the essence of life is suffering. So indeed, there are people who want to engineer their departure so that they will come back again into this world. And of course, most people are successful in doing that. But those individuals who are seekers, who have understood that the essence of life is suffering, who have understood what Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukha, Doshanu, Darshanam. Birth, death, old age, disease, fault, misfortune, and happiness, these are guaranteed to everybody. That this world is a dukhalayam, ashashvatam. This is a place of misery where everything is temporary. And having understood this, they desire to go back to Godhead. So indeed, for those who are avoiding Krishna, Krishna comes as death. For those who love Krishna, death comes as Krishna. So how does one determine one's transmigration? This is explained here in this 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. And in this 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna explains the traditional methods of leaving the body so that one reunites with God. And side by side, he gives his own explanation or his own path. So Krishna is giving you a simple and easy path to go back to him. And at the same time, so that he will have the credentials to talk to you about transmigration, the direction of your transmigration, the Lord also gives a description of how to leave the body and go back to God if you do not want to worship God. If you want to worship the Lord in the impersonal, inconceivable, absolute, unmanifest, ineffable aspect. Krishna has said in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita that those who are attached to worshipping the Lord in the unmanifest aspect, for them, this path is full of difficulties and miseries. And that is seen here in the 8th chapter when he explains the traditional methods where one is aspiring to reach God in the impersonal, absolute, inconceivable, ineffable aspect. And also, Krishna explains that the simplest way given by him is to remember Krishna at the time of death. So this is the difference. If you choose to worship the unmanifest, inconceivable absolute, you have to perform all the gymnastics that are required and explained in this chapter and elaborated in the Chandogya Upanishad. And for those who are attached to Krishna, for them the path is very simple. It doesn't require any yogic feats. It does not require any great abilities or timing. You simply have to remember God at the time of death and you go back to him. So in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna explains, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajante ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavita. But before that, he tells you, Ante kale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam nas yati nastyatra samshaya. One who leaves this physical body while remembering me at the time of death, they come to me. There is no doubt about this whatsoever. Now, sometimes people say, why are we talking about transmigration? Is it necessary? Why not just live life? Why should we think of anything else? So for them, I have a story. And that story is the question-answer dialogue between Yudhishthira and the Yaksha in the Mahabharata. It appears in the one Parva. And the story is set as the Pandavas conclude their 12 years of exile in the forest. And this requires that they should live incognito, in disguise, in Agyatavas, in exile. And when they are discussing this course of action, the princes meet a Brahmana who said that his blocks, wooden blocks used to start a fire by friction, have been taken away by a deer who has plunged his antlers into it. So the Pandavas set out to retrieve the Brahmana's Arani, as it is called. and they follow the footprints of the deer. And while following this, they become very, very, very thirsty. So when Yudhishthir is very thirsty, his younger brother, Nakula, says, I will fetch water. And he finds a beautiful lake. And this lake has no living entities in it. It is completely without any life, except there is one crane. And that crane is standing in the center of that lake. And it warns him that you cannot drink from this lake, because this lake, if you drink from it, you will die. But if you want to drink from the lake, before you drink from the lake, you must answer some questions that I have. And thus begins the Dharma Baka Upakhyana, which is the legend of the virtuous crane. For indeed, what is a crane? The crane is a yaksha. And who is this yaksha? This yaksha is none other than the father of Yudhishthir, the god of death, the god of justice. And Nakula drinks the water from the lake. It's poisonous water, he dies. His twin brother Sahadev comes. He sees Nakula dead. He's warned again by the crane. But Sahadev also ignores the crane and dies after drinking the water. One after the other, Arjun and Bhima also follow suit. Yudhishthir, seeing that none of his brothers has returned, goes to the lake and finds them all dead. But before searching for his brother's killer, he decides to drink some water from the lake. But when the crane warns him that he has to answer his questions, Yudhishthir agrees, provided his brothers will be brought back to life. And thus, the questions of Yamaraj to his son Dharmaraj. And the most important question, which is relevant to this subject matter that we are studying today, is the question asked by the Yaksha, that is Yamaraj, to Yudhishthir. And he says to him, what is the most astounding thing in the world? What is the most astounding thing in the world? And Yudhishthir answers him in the one parva of the Bhagavad-Geeta, of the Mahabharata. And he says to him, Ahani ahani bhutani gachantiya yamalayam sheshastavaram icchanti kim ascharyam param. The most astounding thing in the world is that all around us, at all times, living entities are dying and going to the abode of Yamaraj. Yet each of us, each living entity, thinks and believes that he will remain deathless or immortal, he will live forever. What can be more astounding than this? Indeed, you should understand one thing, and that is, death is the final exam. Life is a preparation for it. And if you prepare for death by learning to remember God and forget self, then at the time of death, by remembering God and forgetting self, you will go back to Him. If you do not live your life as Krishna instructs, then what happens? At the time of death, you think of something else. And thinking of something else, you go to where you are destined to go. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajantya ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state you attain without fail. That is what you attain without fail. Most of us, when we leave this body thinking of our relatives, our friends, especially our children and our grandchildren. And when you are leaving this body, remembering these, you come back. And you come back in the same form. You come back as a descendant of yourself. So most people are reborn to a large extent in their own families. And since they are reborn within their own families, they continue trying to fulfill their desires in the same way. But those who are determined to go back to God, who spend their lives remembering God and forgetting self, at the time of death, they think of nothing but God, and thus they go back to Him. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad-Gita that Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam Evam Yo Veti Tatvata Tyaktva Deham Punarjanma Naiti Mameti So Arjuna. Those who understand the divine nature of my appearance and activities in this world, when they leave this body, they come back to me. And how do you do that? How do you become absorbed in Him? By doing everything for Him. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yat juhosi radasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya tad kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever charities, whatever austerities you perform, Krishna says, everything do it for me. And he continues to say that if you do this, then Sannyasa yoga yuktena vimukto mam evaishyasi. This is called sannyasa yoga. Krishna does not believe or does not recommend shaving your head and wearing orange robes and taking sannyas. Krishna indeed wants you to enter into what is known as sannyasa yoga. Anashrita karma phalam karya karma karoti ya sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. One who works as he is obligated, performing his God-given duties without seeking the fruits of his labor. He is the true sannyasi, he is the true yogi, not one who lights no fire and does no work. So, Krishna is very clear that he wants that you should constantly remember him by doing everything for him. And if you are constantly remembering him, then you are performing what is called as sannyas yoga. And if you are engaged in sannyas yoga, remembering God and forgetting self, similarly at the time of death, having forgotten self, that sense of self which ties you to your subtle body, which ties you to your causal body. This is left behind as you go back to God. And just like from your physical body, earth will go to earth, water will go to water, air will go to air, and ether will go to ether, and air will go to air. So also, leaving the body, the individual soul will go back to God, and the subtle body will be surrendered and will merge with the totality of the subtle body, the universal mind. So this is the essence of what Krishna is trying to explain. We will do the rest next time. But Krishna is really explaining to you that you have to think of God throughout your life. Because by thinking of God throughout your life, you will remember Him at the time of death. And while He explains and elaborates all the methods by which yogis leave this body and go back to God, Krishna's path is not only meant for the yogi. Of course, yoginam api sarvesham madgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yuktatma mata. The yogi, the topmost yogi is one who is absorbed in God. But Krishna says, Mam hi partha vyapashritya tepi syu papayo nayaha. Striyo vaishyas tata shudras tepi yanti param gatim. This path is not only meant for yogis, it's not only meant for Raj Rishis or Brahmanas. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a woman or what caste you belong to, even if you belong to any of the so-called lower castes. Krishna will accept you if you remember him and learn to forget your sense of self. What makes you cling to your sense of self is nothing but cling to Prakriti is nothing but your sense of self. And if you can extinguish the sense of self, if you can put aside the sense of self, if you can transcend the sense of self, and you can remember God, then at the time of death, remembering God, you will go back to Him. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what sins you've committed. Krishna explains. Undoubtedly, Krishna says, it's very clear, he says, that at the time of death, when you quit your physical body, remembering me alone, you come to me. So with this, I will conclude today's session. We will do more the next time. But in case I missed out the fourth text of the Bhagavad-Gita, 8th chapter, Krishna explains that the physical manifestation, which is constantly changing, is known as Adibhuta. That he himself is the Adidaiva. Na me vidu sura gana prabhavam na maharishiya ham adiri devanam maharishinam chasarvasa. He is the Adi Deva. And he is the Adi Yagna. He is indeed the Paramatma seated within your heart who receives all sacrifice that you perform. And in the heart of every living being, this Adi Yagna lives. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridadesha Arjuna Tishtati Brahmyan Sarva Bhutani Yantrarudani Maya. So Krishna explains that those who remember me at the time of death, they come back to me. But simply for the sake of credentialing that he is speaking authoritatively, he also quotes the alternative paths. And the alternative paths of how to leave the body as a yogi and so on is discussed in this chapter, 8th chapter, which we will cover next time. If you have any queries, questions, comments, anything to say, please, this is your time. Are there any questions?
Yes, Shantanu ji, I'm just trying to switch on my video. Just a minute. Okay, there is some problem with my video. Can we just take the question?
Yeah, just take the questions. There's no need for the video.
So what are the daily practices or attitudes that can help one align with Gita's teachings and be on the spiritual path?
Please say it again.
What are the daily practices or attitudes that can help one align with Gita's teachings and stay on the spiritual path to liberation?
There is only one practice. And that practice is everything that helps you to remember God and forget the self. In the Vishnu Puran, it says, Smartavya satatam Vishnor, Vismartavyo na jatuchit, Sarve vidhe nishedesyor, etayor eva kinkara. There are only two rules in spiritual life. One is to always remember God, and the second is never forget Him. Everything else is a derivative of these two rules. Don't do anything that makes you forget God, and do everything that helps you to remember God. So, everything else is a derivative of this. So, there are huge number of things that you can do, but the simplest of them, because two things fill our lives. One is our work, so we should do everything we can in the performance of our duties in a spirit of sacrifice to remember God and forget self. And the other is to chant God's name. I recommend that you should chant 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. That works out to 16 malas in the morning and 16 malas in the evening of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Iti Shodha Shakam Nam, Kali Kalmashu Nashanam, Nata Parataropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. That will take up your discretionary time, which you otherwise will waste on forgetting, on doing things that make you forget God.
Thank you so much, Shantuji, for today's lovely session. And I'm extremely sorry my video is not working today. It was wonderful and an enlightening session. For our viewers, if you liked it too, then do stay with us as we meet again on next Thursday at 8 a.m. for yet another session on the Bhagavad Gita. Jai Shri Krishna.
Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.